And it's another impromptu one, part 4, with a big stroke of luck. The exterior scenes here are filmed much later in the day, but earlier this morning, much earlier in the morning, I fell lucky with this one and caught it open for maintenance day, where they were trimming the grass in the churchyard, just doing the maintenance and checking in the church and testing its bell, the Sanctus bell or summoning bell. So you'll hear that in the video as well. St Mary's, Rotherhithe. This church that you see here is 18th century, but there's been a church on this site documented since the 1280s. And archaeological excavations, and particularly things that were found down in the crypt when the crypt was emptied out, suggest from Roman bricks and Roman archaeological evidence that there's been buildings, whether it was a Roman place of worship or not, that there's been buildings on this site since the Roman era. But this church's main claim to fame, really, it's got a couple, is the Pilgrim Fathers, the Mayflower, and this man here, to the memory of Christopher Jones, 1570 to 1622, master of the Mayflower. He landed 102 planters and adventurers at Weymouth, Massachusetts, 21st of December 1621. They formed the Mayflower Compact and the first permanent colony in New England. And you have to walk around it, read it from the top and work your way around in a spiral. It's the way it's designed. But Captain Christopher's original grave is lost, so this is a memorial to him only. But if you carry on watching and continue watching with the churchyard video, you'll see images of him, as well as a prince buried in that grave. And the captain, the father of said prince, showed great kindness to and the crew. So that'll be an interesting one for that. London Borough of Southwark, sailing of the Mayflower. In 1620, the Mayflower sailed from Rotherhithe on the first stage of its epic voyage to America. In command was Captain Christopher Jones of Rotherhithe. More about Captain Christopher Jones will follow in the churchyard video. Now, the old original church, parts of it do remain. These cornerstones now we catch the 2 o'clock bell, which I was hanging about for. These cornerstones and each of the corners of the church, and this white, what runs around there, are traces of the original medieval church, and inside are memorials from the old church. One of them to another sea captain and there's a memorial, of course, for the Mayflower. So I'll get you some exterior views beforehand. It's a lovely old church. Its exterior hasn't changed since the 18th century, although the interior was refurbished or altered in the 1860s. I'm walking past some box tombs that are just behind me, but as I say, they'll be covered in our churchyard video. I only covered Captain Christopher and mentioned our prince because they're quite integral to the reason that I've come here. But just below me, on either side, which we're just leaving now, are much newer cremations, so obviously I won't show those. Whew. It's as hot as a cat on a hot tin roof. And we get our first glimpse of one of London's most famous pubs, the Mayflower. That will follow after this video. This is the entrance down into its crypt. Cleared out. But when that was being done, and other digging taking place around here, they did find evidence of Roman archaeology and bricks. So it was lovely and cool this morning. Now it's like a bakehouse again. You'll join me back around the front as we go in. Before we go in, a little smidge more of the history. In 1710, the locals petitioned Parliament for a grant to rebuild their church because the old church, lying very close to the banks of the river, was prone to flooding. That was granted, and this church here sits a little further back from the river than the old one, and it was rebuilt in 1714 to 15 to a design by John James, a major architect of his day and an associate of Christopher Wren. As money was short, the tower was not finished until 1747, when Lancelot Dalbiggin, a city joiner and surveyor, completed it, perhaps to his own designs, following a general plan of James. Since then, the external appearance of the church has remained almost unchanged. It is set to a narrow street close by the Thames, and this narrow street and the surrounding areas of the church once formed the original Rotherhithe Villiage. And in we'll go. Well, isn't Luke a lucky lad? I don't have to come back on Sunday because one of the church wardens is in, because the grounds are being mowed and trimmed, and I've just been given permission to film inside the very historic church that we've just discussed. So in we shall go. I'll show you first its font and baptistry. Benefactors of the charity school, I'll photograph that. Donations for the poor of this parish, I'll photograph that because they'll come out better in nighttime mode. Now, These are original to the 18th century church, but as we go into the main body of the church, it was greatly altered by the Victorians. Now, as we shall discuss at the end of the video, there are certain things in here that are made from pieces of one of the most famous ships, the HMS Temeraire. Turn around very slowly. Oh, that's beautiful, look. The organ is stunning. At the end of the video you'll get more of an in-depth history of it and historical images of the old church that was here, that was replaced by this one. There are lots of war memorials and monuments, so we will photograph them. Now we shall go over this side. So I always like to cover the side aisles first, and then save the very best till last. MDCCLXV, which I shall have to go on the Roman numeral translator and translate. Rectors and patrons. Very, very glad to have got into this lovely church. On my previous visit, which is recce, check-out, mission kind of thing. So I like to do my research and get things right for the bearings, particularly for a historic place like this. Prince Lee Boo. I want you to bear that name in mind for our churchyard live, our churchyard video. A foreign prince who died on these shores, but obviously a much honoured and respected man. We'll learn much more about him in the churchyard video, and the captain whose life he saved, who is also commemorated on the same grave, which I think is a beautiful touch. These murals are beautiful. I will go around and take separate photos after. Some of these memorials here are very old and they come from the original church, so they kept some of them. Very much of a nautical theme. The pulpit, which you will see a little bit more of in a minute. Why? Oh, it's toilets, not fair enough. The Royal Arms. The Mayflower. Here beneath lieth interred the body of Captain Anthony Wood, who departed this life the 24th of August 1625, being in the 49th year of his age, and had issue by his wife Martha Wood, 6 sons and 4 daughters. This is not the Mayflower man, this is another sea captain, the Mayflower. The Mayflower, Christopher Jones, master and part owner, was buried in this churchyard on the 5th of March 1622. This tablet was erected on the occasion of the 250th anniversary of the consecration of this church. There are a lot of memorials for me to photograph. I know a couple of particular people actually that are going to enjoy these. I know that memorials and things like that are not for everyone, but they're really good pieces of social history. The Stations of the Cross. See, this church isn't usually open during the week. It's normally a Sunday only type thing. So I thought I'm really lucky today. Church wardens. That's where they would sit. And their staffs of office would go in there. And as they do, I always like to save the best till last, which is the high altar and the most decorative piece of stained glass, Victorian in this case. The stained glass in the side windows, and this window was put in Victorian times along with these murals. In the 18th century, this type of thing would have been seen as popish. It's horrible really, because really, the Anglican religion originates from Catholicism. It's the true faith, if you want to call it that. So yeah, Catholicism was pretty much scourged out and become so distrusted and disliked, mostly because of the Great Fire of London and Hugh Hubert, the poor mentally ill Dutchman who claimed recognition for starting the fire and he hadn't. He said he threw a fireball through Thomas Farriner's window, the lower window, which was boarded and locked shut. You get these people nowadays that claim to have committed crimes they haven't. He was one of them, and obviously Thomas Farriner was quite happy for there to be a scapegoat that wasn't him. So poor Hugh Hubert was hanged. Anyway, that's another story for another time, sorry. This bishop's chair, wood from this, comes from HMS Temeraire. Water's beautiful, it really is. Ouch, that was my ankle. I'm getting old, people. My bones are cracking and clicking now. I've got another 10 minutes, so I've been very kindly allowed to take pictures and stuff while I'm here, so I think we've seen quite a bit of it here now, so I'll go around and I will take pictures of the memorials for you. Hope you've all enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Any historical images and stuff will follow at the end. And my mistake, this altar table and these chairs are made from the wood from HMS Temeraire. Now you'll join me outside. And for our historical look back on this one, you get to see the old church of St Mary's, which stood for 600 years, from the 1100s to the early 1700s, a drawing by Samuel Palmer from 1623. That church was much nearer to the river and was in turn replaced by this one, which was built between 1714 and 1715, to designs by John James, who was a major architect of his day and an associate of Christopher Wren. As the money was short, the tower was not finished until 1747, when Lancelot Dalbiggin, a city joiner and surveyor, completed it. Sadly, I can find pictures of neither of these men, so their work shall stand as a testament to them. And you can see, even with the new church, in modern times, all the buildings behind the back of the church are in the way, but here you can see by the ship's masts just how near to the river it actually is. And if you look towards the church doorway, you can see the girls making their way from the charity school into church. And of course, the amazing model of the Mayflower, which sits inside the church. You have the monument to the Mayflower here, and another monument to another captain. They'll both be covered in monuments and churchyard, particularly with the Mayflower, when we visit the monument outside to Captain Christopher Jones. We'll look more on the Mayflower there. And the memorial with the black tablet and the gold cross, Prince Lebeau. We will also be covering him much more thoroughly when we do our churchyard tour. And the communion table and the bishop's chairs, made from the wood from the Fighting Temeraire, which saw action at Trafalgar. Here is the Battle of Trafalgar. It's an 1836 oil on canvas by Clarkson Frederick Stanfield, and it shows the HMS Temeraire with the Victory in amongst the thick of it all. And the Fighting Temeraire tugged her last berth to be broken up in 1838 by J.M.W. Turner, and that would supply us with, of course, the communion table and the bishop's chairs. Another point of interest for this church is that in 1760, Birmingham industrialist Matthew Bolton wed his second wife, Anne, here. The two had journeyed from far from home to evade ecclesiastical difficulties. She was his first wife's sister, and the marriage was forbidden by canon law. And to avoid no objection when the banns were read, they married there. And the organ, St Mary's organ. St Mary's Church is fortunate enough to possess a fine pipe organ dating from 1764, installed by the master organ builder, John Byfield II. Despite several alterations in the intervening years, the present-day instrument retains much of its original character. And you'll join me back outside, where I'll lead us on to our next location. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that one. That was lucky to be able to get inside there. Now, I take you to probably the most famous location of all in a sec. Just looking down at the old charity school, the watch house where they watched for body snatchers. They did have bodies snatched from this churchyard and from that one as well, hence the watch house. This building here, it has a blue plaque on it, and I'll zoom in so we can see it. The Reverend Nicholas Richards, 1942 to 2006, Father Nick, Rector of St Mary's, Rotherhithe, 1977 to 2006. Voted by the people. And what we're walking around now is what was the original Rotherhithe Village, which as soon as the Industrial Revolution came along, fast turned itself from a village into a town, really, another suburb of London. I'll walk you around this way, St Mary Church Street, because we pass, of course, the old warehouse building. This is the Rotherhithe Picture Research Library, and their collections are said to be very, very good, apparently. So that might be something worth checking out. Here's the old church. That's better. Nearly had my retinas removed. This vault was rebuilt in 1875. Edward Crossley Beck, M. Rector. And I'll turn you up. I'm just going to pause you a sec. No need. And here we are, St Mary Church Street, which leads on to Rotherhithe Street, which is London's longest street still today. It was originally much longer. And this is the famous Mayflower pub. So you'll join me earlier in the day for a drink inside this one, and that'll be our separate video, so join for that part. I'm showing this in this order because it gives a good insight into the Mayflower and the Pilgrim Fathers afterwards as well. And then after that it will be churchyard tour, and then after that it will be the Brunel Museum and the world's first underwater navigable tunnel. So join me for the next part, which will be the Mayflower.